Violence in the black community. I want to know what would you do to help stop that violence, black on black crime.
Right. Well, one of the things I'd do, Ricardo, is I would do stop and frisk. I think you have to. We did it in New York. It worked incredibly well. And you have to be proactive. And, you really help people sort of change their mind automatically. You understand. You have to have, in my opinion, I see what's going on here. I see what's going on in Chicago. I think stop and frisk. In New York City, it was so incredible the way it worked. Now, we had a very good mayor. But New York City was incredible the way that worked. So I think that would be one step you could do.
So that was Donald Trump. Larry Krasner, what is the New York version of stop and frisk in Philadelphia, and what's your position on it?
So Donald Trump, needless to say, is the gift that just keeps on giving. So much wisdom. It's a disaster. I mean, stop and frisk in Philadelphia, in fact, results in the following. 50 young men, it's almost always young men, the vast majority people of color, get searched. They find something 1 out of 50 times. They find a gun 1 out of 400 times. But what they are doing, of course, is they are alienating over and over the other 49 young men, mostly young men. They're reminding them that they're poor. They're reminding them that there are certain neighborhoods where police will do whatever they want. And they are creating an environment in which those young men don't want to be police officers, and in which those young people do not want to share information with the police about a shooting that may be about to happen, or about a shooting of their friend that has already happened. This is the destruction of intelligence-based policing, in which information is actually shared. This is the genesis of the don't snitch culture. What you have here is, thanks to Rudy Giuliani and other people like Trump, you have this incredible divide which has been created by a policy that is unconstitutional.
The Fraternal Order of Police is very powerful in Philadelphia.
Fraternal Order of Police believes it's very powerful in Philadelphia. I would submit, if you look at the results of the last election, not so much. But I don't say that to gloat. The problem is not the rank and file police in Philadelphia, many of whom are very good people. The problem is that the leadership of the FOP, unfortunately, during the campaign, engaged in rhetoric that was very much Frank Rizzo era, throwback, reactionary rhetoric. This is the same group that was on record as having endorsed Donald Trump in a city that is 80% Democratic, to the absolute outrage of the women and women officers and the officers of color. The Guardian Civic League, which is the black union of police in Philadelphia, did a press conference over how upset they were about that. So, the leadership of the FOP has been pretty good at attracting attention during the election cycle, but they have also asked to meet with me, have met with me, and are now talking in a different fashion. What concerns me is not them, because, in fact, the leader is not even a police officer. What concerns me is the police commissioner, and we've had 2 fairly progressive police commissioners in a row. He and I have an excellent relationship. We've met, we've spoken by telephone, and while we will disagree on some things, I'm much more concerned with working with the police department as opposed to worrying about some throwback head of a police union.
Your ability to run for this seat was helped by the fact that the current district attorney is now facing trial for corruption himself, and it wasn't not that long ago, wasn't that the state attorney general was in Pennsylvania was also faced criminal charges herself. I'm wondering your sense of what's going on where now even the prosecutors are ending up on corruption trials in Pennsylvania.
Unfortunately, for as long as I've been practicing, which is 30 years, the people who have become district attorneys in Philadelphia County have been politicians, and ultimately their goal was not to stop in the district attorney's office. It was to become governor or to become senator, whatever it may be. It goes all the way back to Arlen Specter, Ed Rendell, Lynn Abraham, and now Seth Williams. So it's not surprising to me that they end up embroiled in corruption scandals, because the truth is they're mostly running for higher office. It has been, to a very large extent, an exercise of ego. I really don't want to run for anything else. Wasn't even sure I wanted to run for this until things got kind of out of hand. So I think I'm coming at it from a different perspective, which is that I have worked from the outside for justice for a very long time, and I now see an opportunity to be more effective on the inside, and that's what I'd like to do.
And do you fear that the career prosecutors in that office are going to, because there have been some reports that there's thoughts of open rebellion, of people resigning, and people are used to watching Law and Order and seeing the heroic battle of prosecutors in New York City and other places. Is your sense is that there's going to be rebellion in the ranks when you come in?
No, not at all. The reality is that, once again, there are certain people who are trying to, use publicity to indicate that there's more dissent than there actually is. I'm looking forward to working with a lot of these prosecutors. Many of their personal cell phones are in my phone because I am in court 4 to 5 days a week for 30 years trying cases with them all the time. And there are some people in there who are not just good, they're truly excellent. Some of these folks have been feeding me information about police corruption that they could not address within the office without it causing problems for their own career. So I'm looking forward to working with them. But there is no question that in this location, as in many other locations across the United States where progressive prosecutors have come in, there will be some change of the guard. There has to be. When Josh Shapiro became the state attorney general in Pennsylvania, he dismissed about 13-14% of the district attorneys in his office, a similarly sized office of about 300 attorneys and a bunch of staff. And no one thought that was strange. There's nothing unusual about coming in and having some changing of the guard, because otherwise you would be violating your promises to try to achieve the cultural change that you have argued is necessary.
Would you ever pursue the death penalty in a case?
No.
Why?
So many reasons, but let me just quantify it for a moment. I think we all understand the moral arguments on this point. Pennsylvania has not executed anyone against his will since 1962, when I was 1 year old. 3 people wanted to die in the 1990s, and they were permitted to do so. But during that period of time, there have been 6 exonerations of innocent people from death row, and there has been over $1 billion spent in the pursuit of executions that are never imposed. $1 billion, if you break it down, turns out to be at $40,000 a head, about 500 school teachers or social workers or young police officers across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania every year for the last 50 years. We know that measures like good public education stop crime, reduce homicides. We know that. And we also know that there's no evidence that the death penalty actually reduces crime. I see no value in destroying our public schools, which is exactly what's going on, in favor of a penalty that is never imposed and shouldn't be, or we would be executing, frankly, significant numbers of innocent people.
I wonder, perhaps the most famous prisoner from Philadelphia, if not in the entire country, is Mumia Abu-Jamal. And you're familiar, obviously, with his long history and his case. Wondering your thoughts on how justice was served in the case of Mumia Abu-Jamal.
Well, you know, as someone who may very well be the next district attorney, I have to be extremely careful about what I would say in advance of being in office, because it could become a basis for an argument that I should not be involved in that case. So in this case, as with other significant cases in Philadelphia, for example, the investigation around the shooting and killing of Brandon Tate Brown, I'm not commenting during this campaign.